public join us? Do we have any members of the public in the chambers?
No, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Commissioner Seats?
Quentin Cripe.
He's our fire chief?
Oh, he is?
Yep.
Quentin, huh?
Yep.
Okay. Not Donald, but Quentin. All right.
Okay, I've got 7 o'clock on my iPad. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the December 15th, 2020 meeting of the Seward Planning and Zoning Commission. Commissioner Hatfield, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America and
and
to the
republic
republic
for
for which
which
it
it stands,
stands,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Hatfield. Roll call, please.
Cease,
Here, sir, ma'am.
Hatfield,
Here,
Swan,
Here.
Charbonneau and Ambrosiani are excused. Chair Eklund,
Here.
we have a quorum.
Thank you. That takes us to item 4 on our agenda, citizens' comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing. Do we have anyone that notified the clerk's office or the community development department with written comment? No?
No,
Is there
Madam Chair.
anyone? Is there anyone again in the chambers wishing to speak on items not scheduled for public hearing?
No, Madam Chair, there's no one in the chambers and or on the attendees list.
Okay. We will move on to item 5, approval of the agenda and consent agenda. What are the wishes of the commission?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda and the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, can I ask,
Can we
interrupt
have
and
a second?
ask that there
Yeah.
be an amendment under new business to add a work session topic for January 19th?
So that wouldn't fall under the 2020 planning and zoning meeting schedule. Okay, yes, we can get an amendment, but can we take I need a second on the main motion?
second.
Okay, motion by Swan, second by Hatfield. I'll go ahead and make the amendment that we add under new business, scheduling a January 2021 work session. Is there a second on the amendment?
I'll second that.
All right, and we'll need roll call votes on all of the items tonight, so can we have a roll call vote on the amendment?
Hatfield,
Yes.
Cease,
Yes.
Swan,
Yes.
and Chair Eklund.
Yes.
That motion is
The
passed.
amendment has been approved, and that takes us back to the main motion for the agenda and consent agenda. Roll call, please.
Cease,
Here.
Swan,
Here. Yes.
Hatfield,
Yes.
and Chair Eklund.
Yes.
The agenda and consent agenda has been approved. On the consent agenda is the approval of the November 3rd,
3rd,
3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd, 3rd,
And that moves us to the special reports and presentation, city administration report. Ms. Wild, do you have a report for us tonight?
Just a brief report, just so everyone knows, as I had stated at the last meeting, Eric's last day was last Friday. We are working with, well, it's just me and our temporary in the office. So if anybody is wanting something rushed, it's not gonna happen really quick. We'll hopefully have Andy back in January, so I look forward to that, and I'm appreciative of everybody joining into the Zoom meeting tonight. As everyone knows, we are sort of the test subjects, and the council is looking at going to Zoom in January. So this is all us getting everybody in order and getting everything prepared. So I just appreciate MIS and for all their help, because we do have all 3 MIS people in the audience tonight. So that's it.
Any questions for administration from the commission?
What is MIS?
Management Information System.
What is this, huh? All right.
I have one question. Did we get any applicants for our vacant seat on the commission?
Madam Chair, we have not
Thank
received
you.
any applicants. I spoke to the clerk about that this afternoon. We're gonna try to do a little bit of a push on the city webpage, just trying to get people to understand that there's a vacancy, and hopefully we can get some applicants.
Okay, you're back. Okay, well, there was a blurb. Anyway, so push on the city website to get people applying for the vacant seats on the commissions and the committees. So that's good. I don't see any other reports, announcements, or presentations. So we'll move on to item 7. Public hearings. Under unfinished ones, we have none. Under new business items that require a public hearing, I'll read the resolution and then the rules by which you speak. Resolution 2020-13 of the Seward Planning and Zoning Commission granting a conditional use permit to Blaine Barterson for storage in place of the OBI Icicle Employee Campground Unit located at 1607 Northwestern Circle, Lear Subdivision, Industrial Subdivision Lot 2, Block 3, for the purpose of maintenance and renovation in the industrial zoning district. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item?
Madam Chair, we have nobody to speak on this item.
Okay. So I will close the public hearing and bring it to the administration for a staff report.
First, I want to let the commission know that we do have Fire Chief Kreitz on the phone to discuss or answer any questions. And now the background and justification for this. Blaine Barterson applied for a conditional use permit from the Seward Planning and Zoning Commission to store in place 36 temporary housing units currently located at 1607 North Circle in the Industrial Zoning District. Mr. Barterson is the owner of the units and leases them to Ocean Beauty or Icicle, OBI, Seafood for their employee campground.
Phone vibrating.
Somebody's got their phone vibrating. I'm going to mute all the commissioners for right now.
I'll mute.
Okay. For their employee campground, which it requires an annual conditional use permit approval and temporary structure permits. Mr. Barterson requested an exemption from having to relocate the units off-site this year. And staff was directed to have Mr. Bardison apply for a conditional use permit so that he may, upon approval, storage units in place for purposes of maintenance and upgrade. Temporary structures and employee campground CUPs have to be renewed annually, or it has been renewed annually for 11 years. Of those years, exemptions were made 5 times for various purposes. Temporary structure permits are only allowed by city code for 180 days. As a temporary structure is explained in our sections of the International Building Code, the amount of time erected, not the time used, is the basis for this definition. We sent out a staff review, and we received comment back, and the letter is attached in your packet from the fire chief. The surrounding areas of the property is zoned industrial zoning district. We do require a parking permit, or parking of 1 per space for 10 occupants of the employee campground. Tonight, we did comply with the 300-foot notification for this proposed conditional use permit. The public notice were posted on the property, and all hearing requirements of Seward City Code Public was complied with. At this time, we have not had anybody make any comments. The recommendations from staff and that are in the conditional use permit is that the owner of the unit shall bring the units and required foundation anchoring up to current International Building Code and International Fire Code for permanent structures within 1 year of the approval date. Prior to issuance of a building permit, structural and architectural stamped engineer drawings shall be approved by the building official. Per Seward City Code, an approved CUP shall lapse 6 months from the date of approval if use for which the permit was issued is not implemented or a building permit is not obtained. The Commission may grant a 6-month extension upon finding the circumstances have not changed significantly since the date of the initial permit approval. Modification of the approval of a conditional use permit may, upon application by the permittee, be modified by the Planning and Zoning Commission when changed conditions cause the conditional use to no longer conform to standards for which it was approved, to implement a different development plan conforming to the standards for its approval, and a modification plan shall be subject to a public hearing and a filing fee set by the City Council resolution. Our recommendation tonight is based on the findings provided in the resolution 2020-13. Staff recommends granting the conditional use permit to Blaine Bardison for storage in place of the OBI Icicle Employee Campground units for no more than a year without meeting the International Building Code. Any questions?
Everybody's on you.
Is there anyone in the commission wishing to ask some questions? I'll start off then. So,
We need a motion.
your comment regarding if we approve it, it would be 100 days from or 1 year from today's date that he would have approval to leave them in place as temporary structures?
Yeah, it is going against our code. A temporary structure is considered 180 days. But this
Right.
conditional use permit is allowing him 1 year to complete and comply with International Building Code and International Fire Code.
From this date, from when
the
we
date that it's
adopted it?
approved. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We need a motion.
Commissioner Hatfield?
It seems like we're giving him time in order to make
Point of
them
order.
permanent structures.
Yes, Mr. Swan?
Don't we need a motion on the table?
Oh, yes, we do. So, So good of you, Vice Chair. Let's have a motion on the table before we have discussion. I guess we can then ask staff questions as well as the fire chief question. Mr. Barterson is not in attendance?
No, ma'am.
Okay, motion. Do we have a motion for resolution 2020-13?
I'll make no, go ahead, somebody else.
Okay, I'll make the motion
To approve
to approve it.
2020-13?
Yes, 2020-13.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner C, second by Commissioner Swan. Okay, now we have a discussion. Commissioner Hatfield.
I was just trying to, if somebody can clarify for me, maybe. It seems like we're giving him a year in order to make these structures permanent, but he basically says that he doesn't want to make them permanent in his letter.
That's how I read it as well.
Okay. So I'm confused as to what's being asked. Is he asking to leave them in place always, or is a year good for him, or not?
I have a question to staff, and I'm not sure which staff person can answer it. It appears that someone has granted exemptions for him to leave them in place quite a few years, and I don't remember this ever coming back as a conditional use permit. Is there another way that you can get an exemption or a allowance for leaving temporary structures in place over 180 days?
Madam Chair, I'll let Chief Kreitz answer that question.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, yes, the original CUP was 2009, and I'll bring attention to item 1 of that CUP stated that that they were temporary structures and that they should be brought up to today's code if they were going to stay any longer. The idea of temporary structures, which first off, the IBC and IFC do not address temporary structures for living conditions, so it's already kind of a stretch of the imagination. Temporary structures are generally your construction shack that you got set up while you're building a hotel, or we're burning something in the house. Sorry, the fire chief's got the smoke detector going off. That's not good. So anyway, so temporary structures are just that. They're temporary. For example, something to park our car in the winter, but we take it down during the summer.
Fire Chief Kreitz, can I just, I was on the commission when we approved these initially, and the employees of the seafood plant were living in abhorrent conditions, and so it was kind of we were moving them in for safety and health reasons, and that's why we allowed these structures, but they had to follow the code requirements of the 180 days. So back to why were they allowed to stay in place and how did they get exemptions?
Right, and I agree, Madam Chair, that I was told of those conditions, and this is obviously a much better condition for the employees to live in. So that was in 2009. In 2011 was the first time that Mr. Barterson asked the building official, that was then Dave Squires, fire chief, for an exemption that, I need to do some maintenance, and I'm going on reading letters back and forth, emails from them. It's the information I'm getting, but ask for an exemption. I need to do some maintenance. There's electricity there. I can do the maintenance I need to do. Where I stored them off site, I'm unable to do that. So Chief Squires wrote down and that he would allow a one-time exemption, leaving them on site, and that there would be no further exemption. Chief Squires retired that year, and for 2011, 13, 14, 15, and 19, Chief Affey was also the building official and granted them the exact same, waivers under the premise that it was for maintenance. And it's just kind of gotten to the point of they're permanent structures. Stating that means that often. The building code states even if you only occupy a building 180 days, if it sits on site 365 days, it is a permanent structure and should meet or shall meet all permanent structure requirements. So I guess what we're trying to say is this permanent or is this temporary? Because it sure seems permanent, and if so, then we need to make them permanent, meaning a building permit filed, structural and architectural plans saying that yes, they meet fire and life safety code, that they've got a permanent foundation, a wind, snow load, etc. Because it just seems like we're not getting these things moved. And the reason really is lack of code enforcement. Who's telling him to move them and who's following up on it? I wrote to the city manager in that letter you see September 16th that it was of our opinion that they should be removed. And here we are almost the end of December still talking about it. So I think just having this new CUP restate that either you bring these things into compliance with permanent building codes, which is going to be a very difficult endeavor. I will admit that. They're not made for permanent inhabitants. Or, yes, you have this year to do your maintenance, and after that, every 180 days they need to be removed. And that we stick to that. Because that's the code that is adopted by the city. If you want to change the code, you can change the code, but that's an international building code, and we're just want conformity and consistency. And just being fair. And we just don't want to set a precedent. I 100% agree, and I spoke to you about the mods over at the sawmill, and I know we need housing, but I don't want this to get to be where, oh, I can throw a container up, the city's not going to do anything about it. And then we have now all these permanent container housing. So if you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer. I hope I kind of gave a broad base, and I'm really here more just to hope that under your CUP, letter E and F are left in.
Okay. Will there still be an inspection for health and safety done prior to applicant or people moving into them in the spring?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. They're very good about calling us. They usually submit their application for temporary structure right at the end of April, sometimes 1st of May, and we go out there and we do a fire and life safety. And even then, that's difficult because they don't meet life safety requirements as far as sleeping establishments. I know you're familiar with our lodging permit, and so if you look at that, it kind of tells you, well, you're supposed to have a secondary means of egress. Even though they're tiny rooms, there's only one door in, one door out. There's not a second window. So yes, we do a health and safety. We're just looking for gross mold, we're looking for fire extinguishers, and we're looking for working smoke detectors. Right now, that's the only thing we can look for. Do I feel good about it? I do feel good that they're not intense. But it's definitely a liability. It's a liability on us as a city if something happens as well. Because, again, if we're leaving them 365 days, they're permanent, and I'm signing off that they're okay. So.
Okay, so they've been there for over 365 days now. And the requirement right now then would be that they need to be brought up to code.
Correct, or removed every 180 days.
Right.
I mean, not after their 180-day permits.
Correct.
And we don't have a problem with that.
Is it Icicle that calls you to ask you for the health and safety inspection?
They are the ones that call for the health and safety inspection, and generally, I want to say generally because I went through all 11 years, it's usually Icicle that applies for the temporary structured permits. There has been 1 or 2 years that Mr. Bartison actually applied, but this year in particular it was Icicle, and I would say most of them, probably 9 out of 11 were Icicle, and so they're the ones that call us.
Okay. Commissioner Swan.
So I wrote down a couple notes. In my opinion, the goal of this code is to meet a temporary need. Like the chief said, in the long-term context, this is not a temporary. This is a permanent need every year, year after year. We're way past temporary on this. The act of moving this type of a structure encourages the development of permanent structure. So making a move every year encourages Icicle and Mr. Bartison to make them permanent because there's a lot of cost to that. And as far as the statement, as far as his maintenance, I'm not really going along with that because he's had 3 or 4 months now since the season ended to do his maintenance, and they've been there. So, this dragging your feet and waiting, I mean, at this point in time, I think these structures need to be taken out, and they can't be put back in for 180 days. That's where I see they're at right now. Mr. Bartison's statement that if the units have a permanent foundation, they can't be moved in the future doesn't really hold water. I actually, my dad and I have built a couple, we call them can houses built out of containers. They're easily bolted down on a permanent foundation. They're easily hooked up with proper electrical and water, disconnected, quick disconnects, and can be picked up and moved. So I don't see any reason, and I don't see it as a really big difficulty to meet codes with these. It will take him a year. He's got 36 of them. But I don't see this as actually a difficult part, and I think it behooves the city to mandate the moving of them. And I believe it needs to be done this year because they've already been there. My comments right now.
Commissioner Cease?
Having been here the last 11 months with COVID, they got wiped with COVID. A couple of hundred cases, they had to ship them up to Anchorage. So I don't know what kind of year they had fishing when everybody got sick. That maybe I'm thinking we should have grace and give them another year and then come down on them 2 years from now instead of now, because we don't know whether the fishing season is going to come back next year or not due to the COVID. So I think these were unusual circumstances, and maybe they need some breathing area because they sure didn't get it this year.
Commissioner Swan?
Just want to comment on that. I think you're talking two different things. One is the temporary structures, and that's Wayne Bartison, and the other one is Icicle. And those are actually two different organizations, and you're mixing one with the other, and they really don't have anything to do with each other. We're talking about a company that's providing temporary housing and somebody that's doing seafood. And the structure process, those really don't, they're not the same organization.
I stand corrected.
So if we approve this conditional use permit, Mr. Bartison has 365 days to bring these up to code, which would be next December, which he would have the spring before they move into them and the fall when they move out to work on his 36 units and put down the correct foundation and hookups for a permanent structure. Mr. Bartison also would have the opportunity to change code if that's not what he wants to do, as any citizen can change code. This would be a little harder. It's the International Building Code. But when the city adopts the next International Building Code, at times they do make amendments to what gets adopted based on their community's need and what keeping in mind health and safety. So I'm not sure how hard of a road that would be to get the code changed, because I'm in agreement. I think that these should have been made permanent structures or removed and put back every year as stated in the original application. A minor note, on the application, it doesn't say if a fee was paid. Was a fee paid?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? Okay, just a minor note. All right, any further discussion on this conditional use permit? I guess if we vote to approve it as the staff is recommending, then he has 365 days. If we don't approve it, he has to move them. Yes, Commissioner Hatfield.
I would just say something that Tom had said, that if he has to move them now, he can't put them back in for 180 days. If we do make him move them, I think we maybe should give an exception to that time frame, because I'm a little bit concerned about what happens to the Icicle employees if they don't have this housing. Where are they going to get put, and are they going to be in safe and sanitary conditions? So, I mean, if we do say, hey, you have to move them, then maybe we can give him permission to bring them back by May or whenever he normally does for the housing, so that there is housing for these employees.
I think that's a possibility. I think the code is that they can't be in place for over 180 days. I'm not sure that there's a requirement that you can't have them back there for another 180 days. So, Commissioner Swan.
So I have another question. For the last several years, this has kind of slipped through the cracks and not come back to us for a conditional use permit. I seem to think that this has to come back to us every year, or is supposed to be coming back every year for a conditional use permit. And I agree with your comment. They could only have them in place 180 days. I also believe what Kelly was saying, we do not want to. My comment was more of a shot over the bow if somebody's listening out there that, no, they're pulling some shenanigans that I don't like, and it could cost them a real problem down the line if they don't follow the rules, which they haven't been. But I want to make sure that it's understood that come whatever period of time, if you move them now, if he decides he doesn't want to go through with what we're granting him, he'd have to get a conditional use permit again, go through this organization, and to put them back in place in May or whenever they get normally put back in place. And I agree with that, but I also see something that in the way this is written up, we're giving them a year to make them permanent structures. But if he agrees to leave them in place now and agrees to this CUP that has been brought forward, a year from now, if he says, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm just going to put them back to temporary, then I think he might have a very difficult time getting the following CUP, and somebody might be looking to take over that. Because there's another company out there that will provide temporary housing.
Okay. Any additional comments before we go to a vote? Is everyone clear on what the vote is on this item?
I'd like it stated again.
The recommendation by the Community Development Department is that we provide a 365-day waiver for him to bring the structures into compliance with the International Building Code,
The conditions,
allowing them to sit there. Go ahead, Ms. Locke.
just so you know, just so we can list it for the public if anybody's following along. It's on page 9 of the packet. It specifically states that the conditions recommended would be required that these units meet all current international building and fire code requirements for permanent structures within 1 year, or remove all temporary structures after the expiration of their temporary permit without further exception. So, the fire chief sort of touched base on that. You know, the way that we put this together is he has that 365 days to bring it all up to code, but he's also going to have, at the same time, he'll have a temporary permit to run those during that 180 days. Am I correct, Chief Kreitz?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. In April or May, they can apply for the temporary. We will issue a temporary permit if everything checks out, and then start the clock on the 180 days. And that's just the way the CUP reads, it would be 365 days from, so technically it would be from December 15th or of next year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, is the commission clear on our action, on what it would involve?
Even though his temporary permit expires at the end of the summer, he still has until next December to make them permanent?
Yes, ma'am, we would honor your CUP. So this permit's still going to say October 1st or whatever 180 days is, but we would honor your.
You froze again, Fire Chief Kreitz. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just trying to answer and say that, yes, we would still issue a 180-day permit, and it would expire October 1st or whatever date 180 from the application was, but we would definitely honor your CUP. If P&Z wants to have a CUP saying they could stay till December 15th, then yes, we would honor that to give him that chance to have them up to code.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Voting on the resolution 2013, granting a conditional use permit to Blaine Bardison for storage in place of a Icicle employee campground units located at 1607 Northwestern Circle, Lear Industrial Subdivision. Hatfield?
Yes.
Cease?
Yes.
Swan?
No.
Chair Eklund?
Yes.
That motion is passed.
Okay, that takes us back to the agenda under, okay, our next resolution, 2020-14, for public hearing is a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Commission granting a variance from Seward City Code 1510-220 development requirements to Philip Zimmerman, permitting an exception to the zoning code to allow for a total skin area greater than 32 square feet for the temporary advertising of the Gateway Phoenix Heights subdivision located at 2004 Dunham Drive, Gateway Subdivision, Addition 1, Lot 1, Block 3, in the multifamily zoning district. Staff report, please.
Madam Chair, I do have a public comment for the public hearing.
Okay.
Do you want that, or do
I'll
you
open,
want?
go ahead and give your staff report first.
Okay. So Philip Zimmerman applied for the variance to erect a temporary freestanding sign for up to 2 years. The total area of the sign, the proposed base measures 4 by 7 for a total area of 28 square feet. The support structure as constructed is an additional 21 square feet for a total area of 49 square feet. The total area of the proposed sign would not be greater than 1.5 times, which is allowed without a permit. Photos were submitted. We did send out staff comments. No one replied back. We did have one citizen comment and ask about how long it would last, and I replied back to them. Property owners within 300 feet of the parcel have been notified. Public notices were posted on the property, and all public hearing requirements of the Seward City Code 15140 public hearings were complied with, and any comments presented tonight, I have one as public comment. So the recommendation for the staff is based on the findings provided in Resolution 2014. The staff recommends granting a variance from Seward City Code development requirements to Philip Zimmerman, permitting an exception to the zoning code to allow for a total sign area greater than 32 square feet for temporary advertising of the Gateway Phoenix Heights subdivision located at 2004 Dunham Drive in an R3 zoning district.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open public hearing on this item. Is there anyone signed in or was sent in written comment on this item?
We received one written comment from Mr. and Mrs. Ganser. They did ask about the temporary, first they asked about the wanting to know how long temporary was. I responded back letting them know that the variance was for up to 2 years. They did say thank you for the information and that they have no problem with the sign. They are at 2002 Dunham Drive.
Thank you. Is that the end of our comments? Thank you. I'll close public hearing on the item and bring it back to the commission for a motion.
I move to pass resolution, sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
2020-14.
2020-14.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Hatfield, second by Swan. Discussion? Ms. Hatfield, do you have discussion?
I don't see any problems necessarily with the sign. My only comment would be that the photo that's included in the packet doesn't look much like a temporary sign, so I'm wondering if this is going to get moved somewhere else to like announce this new development, or I don't know. It looks really nice. It looks like it is the entrance to a subdivision, which is awesome. I'm just curious, like if they're going to keep it or move it somewhere else. Are we going to deal with this again in 2 years, or if anybody knows that?
Madam Chair, we have discussed it with the applicant, and the applicant, owns all the properties. His plan is to have it temporary and remove it when needed.
Okay.
Or when all of his
Follow
lots
up on that.
are sold.
Okay. If they're not sold in 2 years, you'd have to come back and ask for an additional variance?
Yes, ma'am.
If the code allows them to be 1.5 times the 28 feet, or the 32, that would be 48 feet. And looking at the sign, if he cut 6 inches off of each of that big, tall thing, would he have not had to even ask for a variance? Could he have put that up without a variance?
We would have done the sign permit differently, yes. It would not have been a request for a variance. But the sign was already built.
I have a chainsaw to borrow. Okay. Well, I appreciate that you sent letters out to everyone within 300 feet, because that would be the people that I think this would bother the most. So, Commissioner Swan, did you raise your hand?
I did. And I said I appreciate him going through the process of getting a variance, and I appreciate the fact that he's actually built a sign that is not an eyesore. And I would, I think it'd behoove us to grant this variance.
Amen.
All right. Any additional comments regarding Resolution 20-2014? Seeing, hearing none, I will ask for a roll call vote on this item.
Approval of Resolution 2020-14, granting a variance from the Seward City Code for 1510-2220 development requirements to Philip Zimmerman, permitting an exception to the zoning code to allow for a total sign area greater than 32 square feet for temporary advertising of the Gateway/Phoenix Heights subdivision located at 2004 Dunham Drive, Gateway Subdivision Edition 1, Lot 1, Block 3 in the multifamily zoning district. Hatfield?
Yes.
Swan?
Yes.
Cease?
Yes.
Chair Eklund?
Yes,
That resolution is passed and approved.
thank you. We have no additional unfinished business. Under new business items, we added setting a work session for January. Staff?
Madam Chair, after our work session this evening, I would like to recommend that we have a work session on January 19th to discuss the merging of definitions with International Building Code and our code.
Discussion?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me.
My only request would be that we get them like a week in advance so that we can read through all of them and maybe make some notes so that we can make recommendations during the work session for how we would like the resolution brought forward to ask council to change the city code.
And
Will that work?
I truly apologize for that. I'm hoping that nobody passes away and I don't have to attend a funeral and I can keep it all in order.
I'm sure Ms. Estes, your temporary, would love to work through that. So go ahead and pass her. Tell her I said so. Okay, that then we have set a 6 o'clock work session for January 19th,
Yes, and Madam
and we'll
Chair,
have our regular. Yes.
I just also want the commission to know that we will not have a regular meeting on January 5th. We have nothing to bring forward for that regular meeting.
Okay. And that takes us to informational items and reports. Is there anything that you wished to highlight on that?
No, ma'am. I do plan in the next week or two to send you guys some more information about some online trainings that I'm hoping that we can start after the first of the year. I would also like to remind the commission that I would like to start a little earlier than April for us to do our priorities, so I would like to possibly discuss those in the next, month and a half. So maybe February we can start working on our priorities. So I just want to put that at the top of your list so you guys can all think about what we want for our priorities.
And I'll just comment, I believe the city council just set a work session to set their local, state, and federal priorities. So we might get a look at that list before we set ours. All right, that takes us to commissioner comments. Commissioner Hatfield?
No comment.
Commissioner Cease?
I proud of what we did tonight to help these people.
Commissioner Swan?
No comment.
I am going to make a comment that I hope we do not see another request for a conditional use permit to allow these structures to remain on the grounds, because I remember that was a strong part of our original conditional use permit, that they would be removed every year. So either Mr. Barterson makes them permanent structures, and I think that's doable, or he attempts to change the code. But that we do not see them sit there after 365 days. And I'll add happy holidays And is there any citizens' comments? We see Dustin in our MIS, maybe the only members of public there. Any comment? Okay, commission or administration comments? One last time.
Madam Chair, I just want the commission to know that I started today going through all conditional uses that have been permitted, making sure that we have a calendar of sorts to show when they should have been renewed, how long they lasted. So I'm on that.
Okay, thank you. That was a good reminder of the need to stay on that. All right, I will accept the motion for adjournment, and thank you all.
I'll make that motion.
So adjourned.
Second.
I know. Happy holidays,
Bye, all.
everybody.
End of meeting
Happy
at
holidays.
7:51 p.m.